Hey folks, Rick here from LaLa Farm. Today we're going to be talking all about heat. See a lot of comments on some of the Facebook threads for groups that we belong to, and I've even had comments on our YouTube channel about, what do you do for brooding your chicks out? Because we did several, I think last year we did a brooding video. And that's what we're going to talk about today is different mechanisms for heating your brooding area. Because as you know, that's one of the most important things when you first bring chicks home is keeping them within a certain body temperature range. It's really, really critically important because they don't have feathers. It takes about 4 to 6 weeks, generally speaking, for, depending upon the breed, for a chick to feather out. And keeping them warm, giving them supplemental heat during that period of time is critically important. In nature, the mother is sitting on those chicks, keeping them warm. Well, in an artificial brooding environment, that has to be introduced from some form of outside source. And that's what we've got here, 3 different heating sources that we use, not only for our chickens, but we use them also for our goats. So only after they are fully feathered out are they really capable of maintaining their own body heat as they should. Up until that point, up until they're fully feathered out, it's really important that you supplement that heat source. So between hatching and 1 week old, that temperature is maintained between about 90 and 95 degrees. Between 1 and 2 weeks old, it is 85 to 90 degrees. Between 2 and 3 weeks old, it's 80 to 85 degrees. 3 to 4 is 75 to 80 degrees. And 4 to 5 is 70 to 75. In our experience, it's usually around week 4 to 5 where they're fully feathered out. In fact, that's when we will take them from our inside brooder and move them out into our outside coop to help them more fully grow out. Normally we would brood in our garage in a tank, stock tank. We've also got an outside brooder that's attached to our front coop. They'll generally go out there. We've put them out there 3-4 weeks old, as late as 4 to 5 weeks. So during those first 5 to 6 weeks, your chickens, if you really watch them and you learn how to kind of interpret their behavior, they're going to kind of tell you, give you some clues as to what their temperature is. So when a chick is too hot, meaning that they can't get out from under the heat and they're overheating, that brooder is going to get very quiet, and the chickens are not going to be the chicks are not going to be moving around a lot within that brooder environment. They're just too hot. You'll also notice that they may begin, and I didn't think this was a thing until I saw it myself, with some Cornish crosses that we had, and they were just too hot because we had them during the summer. But chickens will pant, and they pant like a dog. Their beak it'll just look like they're panting. That's a thing for chickens, but you can see that in their chicks, in newborn chicks, if they're too hot. Also, if they're too hot, you'll notice that they will extend their wings out, almost lay them out onto the ground because they're trying to get airflow into their body. When they're too cold, what you're going to see them is particularly if you have multiple birds in that same brooder, they're going to begin crowding together kind of really tightly because they're using each other's body heat to try to maintain the heat of all of them. If they're drafty, then they're going to generally, if there's a draft coming in or flowing through the brooder area, then what you're going to see is them clustered, not necessarily under the heat source, but you're going to see them clustered where the draft is not affecting them. So it may be off to one side, it may be to one side or the other, one end or the other, but they're going to be clustered together. What you're looking for in an appropriately heated brooder area is a heating source that is providing uniform heat in one part of the brooder, and the chickens are moving in and out of that heat source. And they're kind of equally distributed around the entire brooding area. They're not clustered in one area, but they're freely moving in and out of the heat as their body tells them they need to cool down or receive more heat. So let's talk about the types of heat lamps. Now, there's other types of heat lamps, but these by far are the three most popular. And we've got, for different applications, I've got all three types. So first, let's talk about the heat lamp. So this by far is the least expensive option of all of the heaters. And this is what you'll see primarily sold up at Tractor Supply or Rural King or any of the agricultural stores. This is the one that is by far the least expensive and probably the most popular. I'm not going to get into the technical aspects of why that may not be the case, other than talking about kind of this as a heat source. If you want to see my specific opinions with respect to this particular heater as it applies to providing heat source for baby chicks, then check out this video. At a really high level, we're going to kind of explain some of those disadvantages here. So the only thing that really holds this on, what it's designed to do, is this clamp right here. Basically, it's a pinch clamp. Its pinch clamp basically detaches and attaches right here. There's also this little doodad here. It's kind of a, you could use an S hook on this. I don't use this. It is not very secure. Other than that, that's really how this is intended to be attached to whatever structure you're attaching it to. So it has this metal enclosure on it, and this is really to prevent anything from going up and touching the lamp that's inside. So I got my handy dandy thermometer here. As you can see, with that measurement, it's 328 degrees. Now, if this were to somehow become dislodged and get down into whatever bedding you're using, whether that be shavings, whether that be sawdust, whatever you use, that's going to present a significant fire hazard for you. So let's now move on to the next one, which is the heater plate. So this is the next option that we have on the farm. So we will generally, in the past, we've used the heat lamp for chickens. We no longer use it for chickens. We now use that with our goats as for their heating barrel, suspending it above them because they don't need nearly the heat. We can keep that really, really high. For close-in warming, we have begun to use one of two, either an infrared or simply a heat plate heater. This is a heat plate heater. So this is from Pilgrim's Pride. And if I look at this, the cool thing about this particular heater is it's got two settings, a heater setting and a brooder setting. The brooder setting is much lower than the heater setting. So if we take that same measurement on this unit, that's 128 degrees. The other setting that I have is heater. So I can flip this over using this switch right here. And now instead of being a brooder, which is at a much lower temperature, you'll be able to see this is gradually creeping up, 129, 130. So it's very responsive very quickly to increasing temperature. So that's the cool thing with this heater. So if you're able to set this heater off 3-4 feet, you can use that heater session. I think this will max out around 180 degrees, is about as hot as it's going to get. About 123 or so, 125 is what you're going to get in the brooder mode. So I'm going to switch this back down to brooder so that I can handle it. Now the other cool thing about this unit here is it has these legs that pop on and off. Now this allows you to stand this plate heater up. But there's also these other legs. Put in like this. So these other legs, I can take out the ones that allow it to stand up, put them in here on the corners, and now this becomes a platform heater. So the chicks can run in and out from underneath this. Now if I look, remember we set this onto the brooder mode, so I'm going to take a temperature now down onto the bottom of the wood here. Now keep in mind it's 50 degrees outside today, and that temperature on the surface of the workbench is already 80 degrees. So those birds can run in and out from underneath this plate heater. This is a really cool option. Now I primarily have been using this in our brooder shortly after, right after we're done incubating a set of birds. We take them out of the incubator. I will put them into a relatively small container that will allow those birds to be primarily under here in the brooder mode. Okay, so there's that one. It's a cool setup. Again, this particular unit is from Pilgrim's Pride. So the disadvantage of this unit, it is much more expensive. This is the most expensive option of the three options that I'm going to talk about. This one is much more expensive than the heat lamp, okay? This runs about $110 to $120 at Tractor Supply. You can get it online, but there's not going to be substantial cost savings. I mean, the cost is what it is. However, in my opinion, what costs you in terms of the increased cost, you save in a much more safe option for your birds. This is not going to cause a fire. It doesn't get hot enough to cause a fire, as opposed to the 450-degree heat lamp that may fall down onto whatever bedding you're using. It does not rely upon any kind of light, so there's no maintenance to this other than keeping it clean. There's nothing to replace. There's a heater coil in here, which is what provides the heat. And interestingly, the bottom of this is the warm side. This here is completely cool to the touch. So it only heats on just the one side. So if they were to jump up on here, they're not going to have their feet burn. If you've ever brooded out or ever brooded out young chicks, you know that they will jump up on anything that's in there. So this side there's no heat on this side whatsoever. The problem with this particular unit, it is really, because they're running in and out from underneath it, it's not going to heat a larger space. So if you're looking, in whatever application you're using this for, if you're looking to try to heat a larger brood area, this is probably not going to be the best fit. This will work in a smaller brooding compartment where you allow the birds to move, or the birds are allowed to move in and out from underneath the heat source. And you can see it's got two more legs here on the bottom that you can move this even closer to the bottom if you've got very small birds in this. So this is up on the highest elevation that it will fit to. So the manufacturer specifications on this unit says that this should be sufficient for between 15 and 20 birds. And I would say that's accurate, but only for day-old chicks. If you've brooded out chicks, you can appreciate what I'm about to say, which is those chickens will grow very, very quickly. So if you're talking 3-4 week old birds, this is probably not sufficiently large to get up underneath here. And because the heat does not radiate out this way or this way, I would say, I don't know that I would want, after 3-4 weeks, I probably would not want more than 10 to 15 birds under this unit, and still have sufficient space for them to get their heat. So this is our infrared heater, and this heater, you can tell it is well worn. This is the heater that we use, and it performs the lion's share of the work when we need a heat source. So we use this heater both for our chickens that we're brooding out, as well as for our goats, because the safety of this is much higher than, in my opinion, the other two. So we're going to grab the handy dandy thermometer here, and this is nothing more than a heat surface here, but it's not so hot that you can't touch it. Now I wouldn't put my hand on it. That's a little warm if you keep it on there, but you can touch this and it's not going to burn them. So incidentally touching it is not going to harm whatever touches it. So we hit it with a thermometer. This is right at 170 degrees, and it stays at a very constant temperature. Now this one sits a little bit higher than the plate heater, so the heat signature on this one is spread out much higher. So you can heat a larger area with this particular heater than you can with the plate heater, but not as much with the heat lamp. Okay, the difference is this one is 350 degrees, this one's 170 degrees. This one only has one temperature. There's no on and off switch. You plug it in and it begins to heat up. Everything in here is sealed, so water and moisture can't get into that. Now, again, I'm touching this and it's 170 degrees. It gets hotter in the middle than it does out here on the edges. We hang this by a simple chain, and then if the birds start jumping, if they start hopping, they're going to hit this, bounce off of it, but it's not going to burn them. It's uncomfortable. They don't want to touch it. Now you can mount this both hanging from a chain, or if you wanted to, you could hang it on you could mount it from its side as well. either way works. So this is kind of the go-to warmer that we use, not only for the chickens, but like I said, also for our baby kids. So we will use this, the lamp, we will use this, and we've also used the plate heater on the goats. We just had this less than a year. Primarily I'm using this when we're hatching out chicks though. Now this is kind of price-wise is in the middle of these two. So this unit, I honestly is about 4 years old. I think we probably paid about $80 for this unit. I think the price is up slightly. I think it's around $100. Now this comes in 3 different sizes. You can get these. This is made by Sweeter Heater right here up on the top. We'll put a link down in the description section. But when I go onto these Facebook groups and they're talking about heaters, and I will say, well, we use the Sweeter Heater, the majority of the time people say, I don't know, I've never heard of that before. Well, this is a great product. So if we're looking at this as on a usefulness and satisfaction continuum, from the least favorite to the most favorite, this one would be kind of right in the middle. But this one has, even though it's only one temperature, has this chain that we can lower this and raise it however we want to. It's just a much more, in my opinion, versatile option. The heat signature, because of the way that this radiates the heat, goes out like this, instead of this one, which goes just up underneath it. So when you look at the manufacturer specs on this, they're estimating that the larger units of this, now this is not the smallest, but it's not the largest. The largest unit can heat up to 330 square feet, if that's any indication of how effective this is. In the larger unit, it is significantly larger, but for us as kind of a small farm, we don't need anything like that. We got 100 chickens, we don't have hundreds of chickens. Because this unit is completely sealed on the top, where the core goes in, as well as on the actual heating surface, the unit is completely sealed. So it poses a much safer heating option than does this thing. Now, another thing that people, this may have application on, I know in the homesteading community there's a lot of off-grid folks. Now, whether you're using solar or some other source for electric, of these 3 options, this is the least energy efficient. Okay, so if you're looking for energy efficiency, this one's probably your best bet. This is the least energy efficient of the 3, consuming about 100 watts of energy over the course of using it. The one thing that I don't like about this unit that I do wish that it had was the only way that you can really tell if this unit is working or not is by touching the plate. There should be some kind of LED indicator on it somewhere to say, yeah, it's on, or even some other kind of fault indicator saying, this has stopped working, because the only way you can really check that is to go in and kind of put your hand up under the plate and see if it's warm. But other than that, I think this is by far my favorite option of the 3 heating sources that we've gone over. One of the cons is, again, this is price point up around $100 or so. But the one thing I don't like about this is I think it would be have more stability. You see, it's held on 2 chains, so it has a little bit of wobble. If it had a couple of more chains that could go up here and kind of secure it on all 4 sides. Because what I have seen is that once we drop this down into the brooder box a bit, and the chickens get a couple of weeks old, they start jumping around, they jump up onto anything. Well, they will kind of jump up onto the side of this, and then this kind of tips over. Maybe that's by design, so they don't have chickens standing on top of it. I don't know, but I don't like that feature, but it's a small issue compared to what I view as pretty good functionality in this unit. So like the plate, where this has no heat on top, this is not hot on top whatsoever. All of the heat is radiated out the bottom off of the infrared plate. So that's about it for kind of a summary of these 3 heaters, the pros and the cons. I hope you found this helpful. We'll leave links for all 3 products down in the description section. Let us know down in the comments what you use as a heating source. What have you kind of used in the past? What do you think about going to in the future? And kind of what those pros and cons have been of each, so that folks can read your comments and kind of hopefully learn from them as well. So while you're at it, check out some of these other videos. These are from our chicken playlist and other videos from around the farm. Folks, always remember, treat others as you would like to be treated. Be well, folks.